Welcome to the Travel Tidbits Podcast, hosted by me, Jamie Weidel, travel advisor and owner of Pineapple Escapes Travel. Join me as I share the latest travel news, top destinations, and expert tips for the savvy traveler. Because after all, travel makes life sweeter. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Travel Tidbits Podcast, your go-to place for expert travel tips, destination insights, and all of the dreamy vacation inspiration you can handle. I'm your host, Jamie Weidel from Pineapple Escapes Travel, and today I'm so excited to be joined by one of our very own Pineapple Escapes agents, Kathleen Chrystie. Kathleen recently returned from a breathtaking Viking Ocean Cruise through the fjords of Norway, and today she's going to give us the inside scoop, from talking about the wildlife encounters to packing tips, and how Viking stacks up against other cruise lines she's experienced, including, if you've listened to our past podcast, the celebrity flora in the Galapagos. Kathleen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm excited to be back with you.
Yeah,
I can't believe the summer's over, but it's good to be back.
Yes, I can't believe it either. It went so fast. But your trip looked amazing. I was following along on Instagram while you were traveling, so I got to see some of your pictures and everything. So let's talk about the big picture. So this was Norway. What drew you to this particular cruise, and why did you pick Viking Ocean?
So, as you know, I love a good cruise, and I normally pick them based on the itinerary, and this was no exception. We really wanted to see Iceland and Norway. Hadn't really been in that area of the world before. And definitely we're going to do it on a cruise. We wanted to see the fjords and all the beautiful parts of Norway. And we chose Viking because they just have such a class product in regards to excursions and educational learning and trying to understand the places that you're going to go see. It's a very different cruise line than, say, a Royal Caribbean or one of the ones that is more focused on having great kids facilities or parties or other things, casinos and things on board. It's much more focused on a specific crowd. I'm going to age myself by saying it's kind of older folks, but it's well-traveled individuals who really want to have immersive learning experiences in their destination. And that was really what we were going for.
I love that. And so my background is actually education. I was a teacher for a long time. So I love learning about the history and the culture of the places I visit as well. I think that that's great. And even though I'm not quite to retirement age yet, that's still something that I look for when I'm looking for a trip, is I like to be kind of immersed in that. It sounds like your trip was absolutely magical. Your pictures, the water, everything. So pretty. I can't even. But I really am most interested in the wildlife. And I think we're both interested in that, having been on the celebrity flora together. We both like to see the wildlife. So what kind of animals did you see? What kind of tours were there that involved animals on this trip?
Yeah, so we saw a lot. And I think when you go up into that part of the world, you're destined to see a lot. I think it may depend on season and whatever, but we spent a lot of time out on the open water looking at whales. And I'm not talking about they're 200 yards away and you have to see them with a binocular. The ones I saw I could have probably reached out and touched them, probably 5 feet away from me, which was amazing because I've seen a lot of whales in the past when I've been to Alaska and other destinations. And it was incredible how close they got and how phenomenal that was. And there's a lot of bird life. So we went to a place called Steppen Island up north of the Arctic Circle and saw just amazing birds. So if you're a birder, it's really a great opportunity to see that. We certainly saw things like, we saw walruses, we saw all sorts of other kind of seals and things like that. So it was really diverse. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a combination of a trip. Not every port or every excursion involved wildlife, because there's a lot of really neat cultural things and wonderful things to see in the different areas that we stopped. but it certainly filled that checkbox in terms of being able to see animals and get some amazing pictures.
So were you far enough north to be able to see polar bears or not on this trip?
Actually, we were. I didn't see any, but we were in Svalbard, which is the northernmost town or northernmost set of islands in Norway. And they actually have polar bear police there to keep the polar bears out of the town. And when you leave the town area, there's polar bear warning signs and all sorts of stuff. I think we were a little too much summer, I guess. It was probably a little too warm for them. The snow was only on the kind of tops of the mountains, but I'm sure in the winter you would find them in the town because they certainly were prepared for them.
That's definitely on my bucket list. So I'm going to have to go in the winter, I guess.
Yeah, you have to go. And then you get to see the northern lights if you go in the winter. So
yes, that'd be worth it too. Yeah, you had a lot of hours of daylight when you were there.
Yeah, that was weird. For most of the cruise, actually, the sun didn't set.
Yeah.
I got a beautiful picture at like 3 a.m. when I randomly woke up and I looked outside and the sun was kind of setting and the moon was out. And I was like, oh, this is cool. But it was 3 a.m. So it's definitely the folks that live there really have a different lifestyle because it's either dark or it's light all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference. I felt like that even in Alaska, like the big difference in the times and how that impacts your sleep schedule as well. So that's really interesting. So before we jump into the rest of it, can you tell me a little bit about the other ports you visited, anything that really stood out or any tours you did that you really loved?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, we started on in Norway and we did one stop there. And then we headed up north of the Arctic Circle. And that was really exciting because I've never been that far north and it was just a completely different world. So one of the places that we stopped that I really, really liked was a place called Longyearbyen. I'm going to say it wrong, Longyearbyen. And that's in Svalbard. So I mentioned Svalbard with the polar bears and things, but that was awesome because we actually were able to spend 2 days there. Viking does that a lot. They stop in certain ports for multiple nights. I hadn't really experienced that on other cruise ships. So that was exciting because you got to really indulge and see all the things that you wanted to see there. But there in Longyearbyen, we went through a coal mine, which I know doesn't sound terribly exotic, but it was really awesome. And it was very interesting to see. And it was really the reason that that town was even there. Back in the early 1900s, they were huge coal mining towns. And so just to learn the history of it and to be able to see that kind of thing was very neat. And then I have to say I'm in love with Bergen, Norway as well. So we ended our trip in Bergen. And again, we were there overnight. And it is such a charming town that of all the places I would randomly go back to, it would be Bergen. Just a beautiful old buildings mixed with new buildings. Norway is just an absolutely gorgeous country. And so if you haven't ever been there, I would strongly suggest going just because it's majestic and it's beautiful and the people are kind. And it was just a great place to visit.
I love that. So we actually took our kids to Norway. Gosh, it was probably 10 years ago now on a Disney cruise. So we did some different port stops and we went to Bergen and absolutely loved it too. Like it's just such a beautiful area. And even like when you're sitting on the ship looking out over the towns, like they're just, I don't know, cozy, but majestic at the same time. Like that's the best way I can describe it. But
yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I really felt like everybody was just super friendly. And it's interesting because economically, I think Norway, it was historically a fairly impoverished country for years. And it went back and forth as far as who owned it and who was in control. And then they discovered oil. And now the country is one of the wealthiest countries in the world because of the oil that they produce. But it's interesting, in combination with that, more than half the cars on the road, I think, are electric. And 90% of last year's cars that were sold were electric. So they produce all this oil, but they're very conscious about the use of it. And they've really taken a lot of the money that's come to the government from the oil to just upgrade everything. And the roads are gorgeous and the towns are beautiful and clean. And the education system is phenomenal. So it's really an exciting place to look at.
Yeah, this is kind of off topic, but random. So my son is looking at colleges right now. He's going to be a senior in high school. And in my Instagram Reels feed recently, something came up about like how our kids can go to school in Norway for free because it's all taken care of, even their college education. And I'm like, that doesn't sound half bad, actually. So I think he will stay here in the States, but it's interesting how some of that comes up. So let's talk about the weather. So obviously you were there during the summer, but what was the weather like? What kind of things did you need to pack to be prepared for the weather? How was it?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I didn't expect, and I'll go into that a little bit, was just how comfortable all the excursion vendors make you feel, right? So the reality is it's about, I think it got up, it was 80 degrees unbelievably in Bergen, but north of the Arctic Circle, it was in the 40s, maybe at the most. So it was pretty chilly. But if you think about the ocean and the seas there, they never get warm. So you don't want to fall into that water under any circumstances. So the great part was we didn't really have to pack a lot of heavy warm gear because every excursion gave you these incredibly fluffy, warm jumpsuits. So whether you were going on a boat or you were going on an ATV or you were hiking somewhere, you were taken care of warmth-wise. So in terms of packing, that really helped because we just took really basically normal clothes, right? Pants and things, not a lot of shorts, but maybe a sweater or a little jacket. But when you go out on these excursions, you don't have to supply the ski suit because they will for you. And that was super helpful from a packing perspective. And Viking itself is a fairly casual line. I mean, you dress up a little bit for dinner, meaning that you have long pants and maybe a nicer shirt or something on, but it is not a formal kind of environment. So from that packing perspective, either there's no suit coats, there's no ties, there's no big dresses that you have to take. So it was really an easy thing to pack for. And they do laundry, and the laundry was great too.
Nice. I love that. So with your excursions, so is it like a traditional ocean cruise on like Royal or something like that where you got to pick your excursions? And were those jumpsuits provided by the excursion companies or by the ship?
The excursions work like what I'll say a normal cruise ship. Long before you set sail, you can log on to the Viking website and sign up. They have a free excursion in every port, at least one. So a lot of people choose to do that. And then they have alternative excursions that you can pay for, that you sign up for in advance. And I do know a lot of people were changing those around while they were on the ship. So there seemed to be pretty good availability for everything. And then the additional suits and clothes and other equipment that you needed was provided by the tour operators. So you would leave the ship and go to where you were picking up the boat or picking up the ATV or whatever you were doing. And then those providers would give you the equipment.
Okay, that makes sense. I just was thinking like on Celebrity, they provided everything for us and kind of, it was all inclusive experience. So I was kind of wondering how that compared.
Yeah.
I know that packing for this kind of trip can be overwhelming. So I think you've done a good job of kind of giving us some ideas and that they don't really have to worry about a lot of those components for this trip. But was there one thing that you were really glad that you brought or something that you wish you would have brought that would have made the experience better?
I'm really glad I had two things. One was a pair of hiking boots, because if it's rainy or muddy, you're still going to go out on your excursion. And if you're on a boat or whatever and you get wet, you're still dry. So certainly those. And I'm also really glad I took a jacket. I have kind of one of those, it's not really a raincoat, but it repels the water. So that was nice too, as another layer, just to be sure that I stayed dry all the time. But those are probably the two things I would recommend, just to make sure you have a good jacket and some good sturdy shoes.
Yeah. And I remember when we were in Norway, it was also in the summer and it was kind of dreary and rainy. Did you have that same experience overall?
Yeah, we had a couple ports where it was the weather. We had a hike plan that got canceled because it was too windy. up on the mountain. So you just have to be flexible because the weather is what the weather is. But again, it was 80 degrees in Bergen, Norway when we were there. So, and a beautiful blue sky. So you get some winners and you have some losers, but overall it was good.
Yeah. And we obviously can't control the weather.
No, not at all.
That's not in our control. So you kind of just have to go with it. But absolutely. So let's talk about the Viking Ocean experience. I think a lot of people know Viking for their river cruises, but Viking Ocean, like you said, is definitely a more educational brand. People who are looking for something a little different than your mass market, like Royal or Celebrity. So what stood out to you the most was sailing with Viking? What did you like? What didn't you like? How did it go?
Well, I will say, first of all, that I was super impressed by the Viking Ocean product. That we were on the Viking Sky, but in reality, almost every Viking Ocean vessel is exactly the same or very much close to the same. So kind of once you've been on one, the rest should seem fairly familiar. They obviously do that on purpose, right? But I think what it allows them to do is just really vastly improve the quality of different elements of the cruise itself. So our cabin we had a 2-room suite and it was very well laid out. The ship itself is full of great nooks and crannies to read a book or talk to your friends or play some cards or whatever it is that you want to do to pass time while you're on the ship. It's very much built for people to just enjoy it as though it was their own living room, as opposed to this crazy eclectic set of colors and sounds and everything else. It also had impeccable service. So the people on board, whether they were your steward for your room or they were cleaning the rooms or they were the bartenders or they were the wait staff, every single one of them was total quality. Didn't have a bad experience with anybody that we interacted with at all. Certainly the people you saw more quickly learned your name. And I'm not going to say everybody knew my name, but it was very evident that they took notice of what we liked and what we wanted and kind of catered to that. The other thing I'll say is that there's just an overwhelming focus on quality education. So we had on board an Emmy and BAFTA award-winning director who directed one of the Planet Earth series. It was the one on people. Yeah. And that was amazing because she had such amazing stories and such amazing things to talk about in her lectures. We had an archaeologist who talked about the Vikings and really made you feel like you were living in that era. We cleared up a lot of, I won't say rumors because that's not the right word, but cleared up really what the Vikings were all about and the stories and how they conquered parts of the world. And just everybody they brought on board was very focused on making our experience better. And that was nice because that's really is what we were looking for.
So with the people that they brought on board, were these people coming in from each port and talking, or were they on the ship with you, like sailing with you?
Yeah, they were sailing. Most of them were sailing with us. A couple of nights they had maybe some local entertainment that came on board, but the lecturers themselves actually live on the ship with everybody else. And so I would go down at 6 a.m. for my cup of coffee, and sitting there was the lecture guy from the night before. Like we all, it was like a little crowd would get together each day to get their coffee. And they were very talkative. They were cruise passengers just like us who happened to be giving out lectures once a day or whatever it was. So
that's awesome. So
it was a really good environment.
Was that about once a day that they had that, or was it like a daily occurrence?
They had usually a session in the afternoon and a session in the evening.
Okay.
Depending upon whether it was a port day or sea day. But with 4 different lecturers, they probably each did 3 or 4 lectures in total on the cruise. And it was a 2-week cruise. So
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a good selling point, I think, for people who are looking for that. I know that's something that's really important to me, is to actually understand what I'm seeing and experiencing. And I think the misconceptions about Vikings, I mean, that's a very interesting piece of history as well. So that sounds fascinating to me. I love it.
Yeah, it was very cool.
So you've done some amazing cruises. I know that you were on the Celebrity Flora with me, but you've done lots of other cruises as well. So thinking about those other cruises that you've done and what you were looking for out of this one, how would you compare the Viking Ocean ship, the Viking Sky, to Celebrity Flora or any of the other ships that you've been on? Like, what was similar? What was different?
So, yeah, the Sky has about 900 passengers, plus or minus, depending upon occupancy. They don't allow you to have more than 2 people in a cabin, and there's no children allowed. So those are big differentiators in comparison to the other cruise lines. Beyond that, though, I would say they still had parties at night. They still had music at night. They had a big open deck party one night when the weather was good. So they do have activities that are beyond just the education piece. But to me, it was just a much more low-key kind of, as I said, we're all just sharing our living rooms and are together on this experience, as opposed to some cruise lines that I find very hectic. Mm-hmm. Celebrity Flora was not like that, but you go on, I was on an NCL cruise through the Panama Canal earlier this year, and it's like crazed activity. There's so many things going on that for me personally, it was like a little overkill. It's perfect if that's what you want, but I think the Viking product manifests itself as something for a particular set of clientele, and they don't try to do other things. Mm-hmm. They're not motivated to change their format because it works for the group of people that they're marketing themselves to.
Yeah. And I think it definitely is meant to be more of a, I would say, mid-level luxury experience overall, and definitely not that mass market. And not having kids, I mean, no one under 18 can sail on any of the Viking ships. So I think that does definitely make a different feel and vibe overall of what you're experiencing and what that's like. So that's interesting.
There were quite a few people who were on board with parents and adult children. So maybe kids and the children, I say children, but the young adults would be, let's say, in their 30s. Mm-hmm. And the parents were probably in their 60s or 70s. And they had a delightful time because it's just a great way to spend quality time with people that you care about. And so I think that's a great market too, because if you're able to travel with your elderly family, it's just a great opportunity to make memories.
Yeah, I agree. I love those kinds of trips too, where it's low key enough, but you're still getting to see things and explore, but you also have that time together to bond and do things. And I think that's really, I mean, multi-generational travel can start in college age for something like this, where like my kids are almost there, where we could all go. And I think they would love something like this. But I think it just depends on what you're looking for and what type of experience you're wanting. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about how you felt like the service was excellent. You were very well taken care of. And we talked a little bit about excursions, but let's talk a little bit about dining. What were the options on board?
Sure.
How was that?
Yeah. So on the Viking Ocean ships, there are really kind of 5 main places to eat. One is called the restaurant, and that's a normal kind of sit down, be served restaurant. It's open for breakfast and dinner and then lunch during port days. And it has there's one side of the menu is fixed and the other side changes every day. There is a buffet that they have up on one of the top decks, which is quite large and would have what you would expect: salad and main courses and appetizers and desserts. And it was good. And then they have 2 specialty restaurants, and you don't pay extra for the specialty restaurants like you do on other cruise ships. You just have to get reservations. And one of them is called the Chef's Table, and that is what I would say a very elegant presentation of food. It's a fixed menu. They change it a couple times during the 2-week trip, maybe 3 or 4 times, but it's fixed. And it's a very high end. You get the palate cleanser, you get the appetizer, you get the main, you get the dessert, and each course is paired with a different wine. It was very well done from a service perspective. And I think the quality of the food on the menu was good as well. You may not like what they have, but it was well done what they served. And then they have a restaurant called Manfredi's, which is Italian. And it is also has what you would expect from a menu there. There's chicken parmesan, there's different kinds of pasta. They have a very big focus on meat there. I think there's a ossobuco they serve and some other things. And then beyond those choices of those four, there is a little restaurant by the pool, which is open during the day. Mm-hmm. And it has salads and hamburgers and hot dogs and that kind of food. And then they have another place at the front of the ship, which serves, I'll call Norwegian specialties. And I think I think that is open on all of their ships, not just because we were in Norway, but I think it's a likening back to the whole heritage of the Viking cruise line. Mm-hmm. So they have really interesting things like Belgian, they have waffles, and they have different kinds of fruit and different kinds of cheeses. And it's not necessarily a place you would go to eat a meal, but it's a great place to go for a quick breakfast or a quick snack in the afternoon when you've gotten back from your excursion and you don't want to wait for dinner. So a lot of options there to choose from. And I never really witnessed much of a line at any of them. Even when the port talks would get out and people would be going en masse to the restaurant, they very quickly seated everyone. So there were no capacity issues. There was no standing in line that you might find in other cruise lines.
So for the sit-down restaurants, did you have a set time for dinner, or could you go in as you pleased?
No, you just would go in as you pleased, and they would seat you fairly quickly.
I love that.
So the restaurant where you sit down and get served is actually very, very large. I mean, it's probably a third of one of the floors of the ship. Mm-hmm. So right. I have never even saw it full. I mean, it was okay. They have tremendous capacity to serve there, so there was never a wait.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that. I think that's one thing that on the big ships, like when you have a set time you have to go, or you have to do the dining reservations for certain times, that can be cumbersome, especially when you have excursions or that sort of thing. So I love that they kind of let you come and go as you please. I think that's a nice perk there for sure.
Yeah, it was good. And as I said, the service was phenomenal.
Yeah, I love that. So when you were talking to clients, when you were thinking about a Viking Ocean cruise, what would you want clients to think of to know it's the right fit for them? How would you qualify them?
The first thing I would ask them is, where do they want to go and why do they want to go there? Right? And then what kind of vacation people are they? What makes a good vacation for them? Is it relaxing and reading a lot of books? Is it learning something new? Or is it partying till 3 a.m. because it's your big opportunity to? Like, that's not me, but the point being, I think if you ask them what they're really looking for, somebody who is looking for a quiet, relaxed vacation supplemented by some opportunity to see some magnificent places, whether it's the itinerary I took or whether it's in the Mediterranean or wherever else the Viking ships go out in Asia and everywhere else. I think it's a relaxing vacation. I think it's an opportunity to learn. I think it's an opportunity to see a lot of amazing places. And if that's on your bucket list, then I would definitely go down that path.
I love that. And I think that that's a great way to qualify, like, what are they really looking for? And that's what we specialize in as your travel agent. We look at what you bring to us and say, okay, here's what I'm looking for. Here's who's traveling, and help to match you with that perfect trip. And so I think having that insight, and for people who are wanting that learning, educational, historical, cultural experience, this is a great fit.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap up, I have to ask, what was your absolute favorite moment from your trip? What was that one moment where you were like, okay, this is why I travel. This is why I do this. What was that moment during this trip for you?
Well, I'm going to be a little corny on the answer. So we had a lot of difficulty getting there from weather. We were supposed to get there on a Thursday and spend 4 days in Iceland, in Reykjavik, before we got on the boat. That didn't really pan out. And so we ended up flying in the morning of the ship that we got on the ship. So,
oh my gosh,
which I would never recommend. But I will tell you, a glass of champagne on my back deck, looking out at Reykjavik, that was when I said, this is why I'm here.
Yeah. This makes it worth it to get here and see this and to be here. Yeah. And I think those moments when you're traveling, like when you're just like, okay, yeah, all of that pain, all of whatever I went through to get here, which I know your flight issues were crazy for this one. Like, it's that moment. And that's one of the things that I love so much about travel in general.
Yeah. It was just a very nice, relaxing time. And the pictures are gorgeous, but they don't do justice for the majesty of the fjords. So I would highly recommend it if it's on your bucket list to try to make it happen, because it is absolutely an amazing place.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing about your experience on the Viking Sky. And I love to hear your stories and all about your experience. As I said, I followed you on Instagram as you were going on the trip, but I love being able to talk to you and ask some more in-depth questions and get more information for myself and for our listeners who are interested in Viking Ocean Cruises. So anyone who is tuning in and listening today, if you were dreaming of Norway or a luxury cruise experience like Viking Ocean Cruise, reach out to Kathleen or myself, and we would love to help you plan something that is truly unforgettable. Also, please don't forget to follow us over on Instagram at Pineapple Escapes Travel. Over on our Instagram, we're sharing more travel inspiration. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a follow on Spotify or Apple and leave a review. Share this with a friend. We would love to spread our knowledge to more and more people. But until next time, remember, travel makes life sweeter. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Travel Tidbits Podcast, where we believe travel makes life sweeter. The team at Pineapple Escapes Travel would love to help you plan a trip filled with lasting memories. Visit us online at www.pineappleescapes.com to start planning your next adventure.